So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through actually running these reports so you can see how simple it really is. The first report is a general ledger summary trial balance. For this, you just tell it the period that you want to query. And run the report. It's working, I promise. There we go. And then you can just dump it into an Excel spreadsheet, which we have a link right here. You can also PDF it if for whatever reason you also want an archived PDF version of it. And that looks something like this when it's in the spreadsheet. Then all you have to do is copy that tab into your model, and you can use it by reference to complete your schedules, H, fringe, you name it. So I do have an example here. So here's where I dumped the trial balance. You can see I've got my co's trial balance, assets, the whole kit caboodle from the trial balance. I didn't segregate the costs out. You don't really need to. Because in order to complete my schedules, all I need to do is reference the particular lines that these come from. So the easy way to do it is just to select your G&A accounts for your G&A tab, copy and paste those into the tab itself, and then via reference, here I use an if not and a VLOOKUP nested formula. You can tell Excel to look for this value, and you'll notice that in this cell I didn't even segregate the account number from the description. G&A or DCA won't care. All they care about is that there's an account number here and there's a description. You can actually make this column more narrow so it kind of looks like it's separated into two columns. But for the most part, you're just going to look for this value. It actually saves you a step of having to format some of the data that comes out of Unanet in this report. So you can just copy and paste it and then start filling in your schedule. So I just take the G&A values, I look it up, and I just copy the formula down. If you have any adjustments, you can enter those in manually. I enter the standard adjustments that came with the workbook itself. I just left them there for demonstrative purposes. And you do that same thing for your other schedules. Schedule C, you just use an if none VLOOKUP command. If not, we'll change the value, or we'll record the value of whatever you put in this placeholder right here. In this case, we used 0 because we don't want it to return the hash mark NA, which is what the not and if stands for, because it can't find the value in column A in the sheet that we're looking at. You just repeat that for all of the schedules that require GL data. The workbook is set up so that the blue cells contain formulas and the yellow cells contain cross-references. So you'll see that this one actually refers back to the fringe tab. It'll pull your G&A and calculate it. And your other indemnity pull the same way, although I didn't finish that. I just did the first three for example purposes. And fringe, just so you can see how they calculate, and we can pull fringe into other tabs. So that's your trial balance. The next report you run, and there's what it looks like. Another way you can do it is by reference. You just do a one-to-one reference instead of the IFNA VLOOKUP that I did earlier. You can just say this equals cell 1 of my G&A accounts, and you do the same for the description, cell 2, cell 2. The next report we would run is a project summary by cost element. What this will do is it will pull all of your data for your direct projects, and it will break it down into your various cost elements: direct labor, travel, subcontractors. However you define your cost elements in Unanet, this report will break it down by those elements. And it will contain most of the data to populate many of the project-related schedules with minimal need to hand jam data. And it's running. Wait for it. It's almost there. I can feel it. Come on. Open.
Jim, this is Sherry. We did have a quick question while that was running, that this requires the Unanet general ledger system, the accounting financials. Is that correct for the previous trial balance export? Or?
Not necessarily. We could do it with project accounting.
Okay, project accounting. Okay.
Yep. As long as we've got tracking and you've got a chart of accounts in there, we could do that.
All right. Well, that's a great question, because they were saying they were only using it for labor and expenses. So as long as there's a chart of accounts there, then we can do the first one. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so here's your project summary by cost element. You can see it's broken down into ODCs, labor total, ODCs. And you can copy and paste that report back into Excel. And here you see I have the same report. It's a little bit different degree of detail because I've got equipment and travel and subcontractors. Just copied the formulas into, or the report into an Excel spreadsheet. No manipulation needed. And then I can link my Schedule H and the other project reports to this report and pull all of the data that I need to populate. You'll notice that because this is a man-generated or person-generated model, sometimes the links aren't always correct. It shouldn't be labor overhead, it should be labor direct. That's why I highlighted it and made it red, just to let you know that nothing in this model is set in stone. You can change it, you can manipulate it, you can do whatever you want with it to make sure that the elements are as they should be. So what I would normally do here is I would change that to direct, just override it. So it pulls using just a direct reference what the values are for direct labor, travel, materials, and then it sums them up and runs through the canned formulas here. And all that pulls from, I just chose the cost plus contract here. So you can see the $220,000 of direct labor and the travel, materials, whatever it was. So do that throughout your cost type contracts, if you have any other flexibly priced contracts, and those are all listed by contract type in the report. So there's really not that great deal of guesswork involved, and it's not all that manual. even if you have a large portfolio, it's really simple just to choose a value, and another value, and drive on. That's Schedule H. But the really exciting thing is being able to populate this bad boy right here. So this, you can do this several different ways. Schedule K is the T&M report in your incurred cost submission. What we did there, I'll pull up Unanet again. What we did there is we ran what we call an ad hoc report. You can create a report specifically for your Schedule K or your Schedule H. And I'll show you how this is set up. So I created a few custom columns to give us some summary. I won't go into them because you can pretty much see the meat of it right here. So we've got total billed amount, which is timesheet sell hours times timesheet sell effective bill rate, comes produced as a number, and then the timesheet sell hours, which is the sum of all timesheet sell hours. Because what this does is it pulls the data on a detail level, so day by day. So if you have 5 8-hour days, it will show each day listed independently, unless you run this formula, which will sum them all together. Then we include those in the list of report columns that we want to see actually displayed, and you can choose any number of values. Pretty much, there are very few, if any, cells in tracking and expense that are not reportable through an ad hoc report. So I've chosen the project code, project title, external system code, which is something that you could use to identify maybe a prime contract number or other external contract number or external identifier that you wanted to use. The task name, labor category name, timesheet sell hours. Again, this is the one that's referenced here. This is this timesheet sell hour, so that's actually this formula that's going to be shown. The effective bill rate and the total billed amount, which again is this formula back from the column, custom columns tab, that multiplies your timesheet sell hours times your effective bill rate to give you your revenue. You can sort it. In this case, I sorted it by project and task and labor category. And you can even add criteria. So I don't want to look for anything that's before January 1st, 2015 or after December 31st, 2015. And I want to make sure that everything that I pull is for a billable project. I don't want overhead or G&A or PTO or anything else in here. Then we have the summary tab, which is where you can actually sum you can foot, as we say in accounting, you can foot the amounts at the bottom of your report. So I footed the sell hours and the total billed amount. And then you just run it. And it looks like this. And you can download it as a CSV. You can dump it into your ICE model. Here's my ad hoc report in CSV format. One thing that I did here that I won't go into in great detail is I created what we call a refreshable web query, which is one of the functions of Excel that Unanet supports. And if for whatever reason you go through audit, what have you, and these values should change, you can just right-click on your table, click refresh, and it'll update the data from the existing report in Unanet. So had these values changed, you'd see the new values once the report is finished refreshing. And of course, the refresh didn't work. Yep. So what I did there was I took the actual contract number and I just did a direct link. So I said, okay, this is the first contract in the list. It's the 10 production contract, and I said I want to link it here directly. And the same with the task. I just did a one-to-one link there. And then I did a couple nested formulas, and I said, if in the Schedule K ad hoc report you find this value, which is the contract number, I want you to return the labor category associated with that. So each labor category that's associated with that project 10, which I'll show you in the, it would be associated with this customer 1, 10 content production. Will be pulled by this formula. And I do that to another degree. You'll see this is kind of a shorter formula. To the right of that, I say, well, now what I do is I want to look at both the contract and the task and the labor category. And when you find the combination of those three in that report, give me the value in the cell that I've identified as the rate. And I do the same thing for hours. Again, you look for the contract number and the task and the labor category, and it'll give you the number of hours that are available for it. It's that simple. I did it for the second task too for the same project. Uses the same labor category. It's looking for contract number 2, task number 2, same labor category, and it's pulling whatever rate is listed as the effective bill rate in that cell. And it does the same thing for hours. And the same thing for task 3. It pulls the rate, it pulls the hours, and then all you have to do is copy it down. And it's that simple. So in just a few minutes, the hardest part was actually trying to figure out how to do these nested values. Now you've got them. They're available to you. I'll share them with you. You can use them if you need them, or come up with your own. And you can take what is really an onerous schedule because it's formatted, as you can see, horizontally, whereas most reports are formatted vertically. You can take this, use that nested cell, complete your Schedule K using the ad hoc report in just a matter of minutes. And this is what it would look like had Excel not crapped out on me. So it pulls the job number. The prime number is one of the fields that we talked about for the external identifier. That was one of the columns that I used in the ad hoc report itself. I didn't pull it in the report that I showed because the project that I used as an example didn't have one. But if you use that external number, you could pull your prime contract number and populate this field. Or you could pull it and populate the subcontract number. There's also a variety of other fields you can use to populate both the prime number and the subcontract number. So these are the, sorry, go back to that one. These are the fields that are available for you when you're creating your ad hoc report. I didn't go through these because I already had the ad hoc report completed. You can do these various views using person data, or you can also see a variety of views using project data, and then all of the various cells that are available to you to query on. Your custom columns, the formulas, this is how the screen looks when the formulas are involved. Sorting, your criteria, your summary, and boom, that's it. So it took the spreadsheet that I was showing you, took the combination of project code, cell task, labor category, and gave you the hours and the bill rate, and then the model itself calculated the revenue, which is the total billed amount. And that's what it looks like in the spreadsheet. So if you have any contracts and you're not one of the exceptions to the rule, other than firm fixed or labor hour, you probably have a need to submit an incurred cost submission. The ICE model's a little bit cumbersome. Some of the schedules are not super user-friendly. A lot of them require significant data entry, especially when it comes to your contracts and your backlogs and your contract summaries. But for the financial data, the ICE model makes it fairly easy to ensure adequacy. You've got schedules A through O. The majority of them are going to be pulling from either your project reports or your general ledger. And you can complete some of the cumbersome schedules like we just saw with Schedule K pretty easy. Like I said, the hardest part was probably coming up with the formula to the AND formula to concatenate the two variables or three variables into one value. So here's some things for reference. I talked about them in the very beginning of the presentation. The FAR has three particular clauses, 16307 that instructs contracting officers to include the other clauses in contracts. And they're included by suggestion, even if they're not, or by implication, even if they're not explicitly listed in the clause or in a contract, because you're supposed to have or be subject to it, even if the contracting officer forgets to put it in there, or the prime forgets to flow it down. So it's kind of like ignorance of the law is no excuse. So 5207, I'm sorry, 52216-7 is the allowable cost and payments clause, and then payments under T&M and labor hour contracts references 216, but only to the extent that there are cost reimbursable elements of a T&M contract. And as always, there's DCA.mil. So I welcome any questions you might have.
Hi, this is Sherry. Does anyone have any questions? You can put it in the questions box in the console in the GoToWebinar. I'm even chatting. You know, if you'll chat me a question or raise your hand even, I can come to you. In the meantime, Jim, why don't you, if you can switch screens and show them the Knowledge Center entry that we have on ICE and just do a search on ICE. That might be helpful because that is an entry there that people can refer to after the webinar is over with. Perfect. And so Jim just went to the Knowledge Center entry, Knowledge Center unanet.unanet.com or kc.unanet.com. And in that search module in the upper right hand, you know, just searching for ICE and it comes up with this entry. Okay, go ahead.
Yep. So it essentially walks through with a little bit of detail that we didn't discuss into the various schedules, whether or not they're required. All the supplemental schedules, which if you've been doing this for a while, you know how the ICE has changed over the last few years. They changed the supplemental schedules, A1, 2, 3, 4, and then B, C, and O. Talks about the Unanet reports, including the ad hoc that you would need to run. A little bit about the setup for the ICE, and then how you could possibly format the GL detail report, the trial balance to suit your needs. Again, like I showed, you don't necessarily need to go through all the formatting, as long as you can just copy and paste these exact values into the workbook itself. Then you can just use those to query the chart, pull the values. Alternatively, I mean, you could, if your chart of accounts is small enough and you know it's not that onerous, you could copy your G&A accounts, paste them into Schedule B, then you could copy the G&A amounts and paste those into Schedule B too. I mean, it just depends on what's easier for you. You can do it by direct reference. You can do VLOOKUPs. I mean, anything you can do in Excel, Unanet will help you do it faster.
Now, Jim, there's a question that's coming in from Brian asking about if he can get a copy of the actual formulas that you showed.
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely. I'll put them on the link below. Or Sherry, what's the best place to put those?
Let's see. Well, send them to me and we'll make sure that you get them, Brian. And we can also, if you have a link, you can put it in the chat box. And by the way, in the chat box right now is the link to this Knowledge Center entry, but it's very easy to get to just by going to the kc.unanet.com and just searching ICE. But I did put the link in the chat box as well. And it might even be a great idea to have the formulas in the KC
Yeah, here they are.
Yep, so that might be a great idea. Perfect. Thank you, Ryan, for that one. Oh, there is a question here. I have recorded this webinar, so it'll be posted on our Knowledge Center as well. So I'm sure, give us about 48 hours and we will post it, and you can search for ICE and it will probably come up as well. So give us about 48 hours to process that and get that uploaded. And again, the PowerPoint is in the handout section as well. Jim, I appreciate you taking time out today to talk to our community here about this and showing us how we can do that. Very simple.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. All right, if there's other questions, we will check you next time. Next week is our webinar on expense management and expense reporting. So you want to join us at the same time next week on next Thursday. Thank you and have a great day.